Hello and welcome to React Environment and Component section 4. In this section we are going to take a look at what is the React.js and how can you install it, what is JSX, how do you render the elements, components, and what are the properties, what are the state and life cycle, and how do you handle the events, what are the list, collections, keys, and routers and forms. What is React.js and how do you install it? So in this video, we are going to take a look at what is React, what is the development environment, and how do you install it. So let's get started. What is React basically? React.js is an open source JavaScript library building user interfaces maintained by Facebook and Instagram, and it is very fast. Basically, it allows the developer to create large web application, and its DOM manipulation is too fast. It deals in the components. So it breaks your web page into different component, and then you create a whole web page with that components. You can create a single page application in React, and you don't have to reload the page every time the view is rendered, right? So why to use React? It is fast. DOM manipulation is fast. The reusable components. We will talk about these things like components and elements and later on. And it is scalable. You can create the single page application, and it is the view in the MVC, so it only deals with the view in model view controller, and it has the dev tools, right? So it's not like a normal JavaScript which is hard to debug, and it has rich APIs of development tools, and you can even use the debuggers to debug your code. All right, let's get started now. What is the development environment? First, we are going to use a package manager. The package manager, we would be using Node.js. So if you don't have Node installed, download it from here. The IDE, I'm going to use Visual Studio Code, but you can use Atom or whatsoever the IDE that you have. The compiler, we are going to use Babel. Babel is the compiler which converts the React.js to something that browser can understand. And then we will use the bundler. We are using Webpack. Webpack is a tool which bundles all your views assets like CSS, JavaScript file into a single file, and it uses Babel internally. All right. Now for the debugger, I'm using the debugger related to Visual Studio Code, related to my IDE. By clicking on it, you can install the debugger for Visual Studio Code. And if you want to go and look for Visual Studio Code document to use React.js and how to debug it, you can go on this link. Alright, let's get started with the installation. Our first option to use React is don't install anything. So if you don't install anything, you are not installing Babel, you are not installing Webpack, so it's not suitable for production. If you want to fiddle around with React, you can use this option. Alright, so if you go to the Facebook GitHub link of installation, you will find this kind of a screen where it is saying trying out React. So if you want to just try the React, you can click on this link, which will open a CodePen link, and you can fiddle around with the JavaScript in here. Or you can download the HTML file, edit this, and start using it. So this is the CodePen. It uses the Babel as compiler, React DOM render method, wherein you are rendering the element. So this render method takes two arguments. The first argument is what you are going to render, and the second argument is where you are going to render it. Alright, so we will start with this HTML file. Download this HTML file. This hello.html I have downloaded and opened in my IDE. You can see that we have three script element. You are importing three scripts. One is the React script and the React DOM. Second is the React DOM, which actually renders the element into the DOM, document object model. So you need two libraries, two scripts from React.js and React DOM.js, and the third script for Babel compiler, Babel minimum.js. Alright, React DOM render method takes what you are going to render and where exactly you are going to render it. So you have an element, division ID root. You are actually fetching this element in your render method using document.getElement by ID and using the JavaScript expression with the ID, and that's where you are going to render hello world. But this needs to be given into a script tag which Babel can understand, right? So Babel should know that this is the part where the React has been written and I need to compile it. Apart from getElement by ID, you can use jQuery query selectors as well to get it. Alright, so if you open up this HTML page in a browser. So this is how it looks like. Hello world has been rendered. Now this method does the runtime code transformation because Babel has been used as in JavaScript, and this is going to be the runtime transformation of React element, which is slow. Thus it is not recommended for prod. But if you want to go with this kind of setup in a prod, which is of course not recommended, but still if you do, change the JS file name as react.min.js and react.dom.min.js. Alright, so even if you ignore the warning, want to go with this setup, then you can use minimum.js files for React and React DOM. The second installation method for React is create React app. Open up the command prompt. Of course, we need npm as a package manager, so it is assumed that you have installed Node.js. Now we will do npm install React app. Create React app is a global command line utility that you use to create new projects. Npm install without -g option will install module locally. With -g option, npm install modules globally and add in the path variable to be executed from the command line. So you don't have to go. Alright, so create React app has been installed. Now we will create the app, React app, using this command. So let's run this, create React -app, and let's call our project name is infancy. Now once it is done, you have the infancy directory wherever you have run that command. You can go into the directory and npm start. Now after npm start, you will see the application on localhost and at the port 3000. This is the default port used by create React app. Now let's import that project into the IDE and take a look at the folder structure. Let's start with the public folder. So this public folder has index.html page. This is just the HTML template, and in this HTML template you are going to define the division with the ID where do you want to render the React element. There is no script tag which is actually importing React or React DOM or Babel. So it is going to use Webpack and Babel internally. It is not going to use the JavaScript file imported using script tag. You have the source directory src, and in this src directory you have index.js file. This index.js file is the JavaScript entry point. So if you have configured this project manually instead of using create React command, then you can define what should be your entry point. Create React app default configuration is to use index.js as your default entry point for your application. Now this index.js is actually importing the React DOM, and if you have any CSS, and this is the component, we will talk about this later on. The register service worker is basically used to provide the caching in React, and then you are using the same method React DOM. You are going to render it. What you are going to render it? This component. We will talk about the component in later videos. And then where do you want to render it? So this is the root which has been defined in index.html. For the project to build, these files must exist with the exact file name index.js and index.html page in public folder and index.js in source folder. We need to put any JavaScript, JS or CSS file inside the source folder. Otherwise, Webpack won't see them. This is the default configuration using create React app package.json file, which creates the overall configuration for your React app, the name, the version, the dependencies that you are going to use as React, React DOM and React script, and the scripts is going to be executed. You can run these phases in your app. So first is npm start. When you run npm start, it actually starts your application, but internally it actually running the React scripts and giving the option start, and then it runs the application in the development mode. So if you open the localhost at 3000 port, it will be rendered into the browser. This page will be reloaded. If you make any edits, Webpack configuration has been defined in a way that if you edit any JSON file or anything, this configuration will be reloaded by itself. Now this npm build is going to build it for the production. It correctly bundles React in production mode and optimize the build for best performance. If you are done with the development, you are going to push it to production. You can use this build phase and the test phase. Of course, it is going to run the test cases for you. It launches the test runner in an interactive watch mode. So Webpack will be running in a watch mode. Now create React app uses just as its test runner, and then you have eject. This eject is a one-way operation. Once you eject it, you cannot go back. This is one-time operation. Now if you are not satisfied with the configuration provided by create React app, you can eject from it. So all the configuration of Webpack, Babel will be exported into JS files, and you can configure it at your own if you want to define or customize it at your own need. Now let's try to run the test using npm run test. Now just will looks for the test file with the name test.js suffix or spec.js suffix. So what this is going to run is the file app.test.js because it has the suffix .test.js. Now in this test case, you are importing the React DOM and the component, and this is the name of the test. You can define any name, whatever you want for the test case. It is going to render the component into that division if it's successful or not. So if you run it, it will be pass. Now every time you save a file, it will rerun the test just like npm start recompiles the code. Now let's take a look at the third installation method, install and configure dependencies manually. Alright, so this will be typical and this will explain all the configuration. Open up the command prompt. If you have already running application, you Control C and then terminate it. Now to install the React manually, first create a project directory. So we will call our project manual because we are manually creating it. Let's create a directory and get inside this manual directory. Now you need to run a command npm init. It will ask you for project description. What is the name of the project? What is the version or everything? So the name is manual, version, description, entry point. So here it is asking you what should be the entry point for your application. In create React app, index.js is the default entry point. Now you have the option to configure it by yourself or give the name, any of the name. I will stick to index.js. Test command git repositories, I don't need. Author, I will give my name and then license. That's it. So it will ask you, is this okay? Press yes. List, you have the file package.json. So if you see this file, it gives you a JSON syntax of your project description. Let's import this project in IDE. So you have the package.json file. Now I'm in the project manual. I have imported it. This is the package.json looks like. Now we are going to install the dependencies that we need. First of all, we need to install React and React DOM that we need. So let's install it. Npm install React DOM. Now if you want to save it as a dependency, you have to specify -- save. This option will create an entry in the package.json file for your dependencies. You're done. So this is updated. Now the dependencies, as you can see, has React and React DOM. Now we would need Babel as compiler, Webpack as builder. So let's install those dependencies. But remember, after Webpack bundles your application, Webpack isn't going to be used in the production because it has already bundled your application. So you can use that bundle and push it wherever you want to push it in the production. So you don't need Webpack, you don't need Babel in production, right? So these dependencies that we are going to install now are only related to the development environment. So let's install npm install, and since these dependencies ask for development environment, so we will define it as save dev. Now first we will need Webpack, then we will need Webpack dev server, Then Babel core libraries, Babel loader, Babel preset for ES6, that is ES 2015. So ES 2015 is the 6th version of ECMAScript, so that's why it is called ES6. And then we will need preset for React, so Babel preset for React. And then there is another preset that we will be needing, Babel preset stage 2. That's it. Now meanwhile this is installing the dependencies, let's create the directory structure. So if you can see, the node modules has been created by default because that's where your dependencies are getting installed. Of course it is going to be created by itself. Now let's create the folders. First folder we need is public folder. In this public folder we will create a file called index.html. Now we need another folder is source folder. In the source folder we are going to create our entry point, that is index.js. Let's create a component just like in the previous example so that you are on same page. Let's create app.js. This is the component. So this is an index.html page, the talk-time HTML. It has the head element and it has the body. In the body element it just have one element with an ID root. That's it. That's where we are going to render our React element. So let's get over with the index.html. Now let's create an app.js file and copy all the content whatsoever you used and create React app, because we haven't learned the component as of now. So just copy it over from create React app directory. So in the app.js, it's just the component, it is using React and it is returning the element, React element, which is going to be rendered in the element root of index.html page. That's it for now. That's what you can understand. And in the index.js page, in this, what we are going to render is the app element. We have imported the app.js and where we are going to render it in the root element of index.html. Alright, having said that, everything is done, but what about Webpack and what about Babel? Where have we configured those things? We haven't. Now we are going to create the Webpack configuration. So let's create a file in the root of your project, name webpack.config.js. Now in this file, the path variable, we require the path variable and we require the Webpack from the Webpack dependency. Now we are going to create a module which we are going to export. You can create a variable and then export that variable. It's the same fashion. We will create an entry. That's where we are going to define what is the entry point for our application. So that's where we are defining entry. This is the path.resolve and this is the standard variable underscore directory name. This is the root path or context path for your application, and inside that you have src directory where your index.js is residing. That is your entry point. We will use the comma. We will create an output element. The output is where after Webpack, when Webpack is going to bundle everything like index.js, app.js or any CSS file that we are going to use, where it is going to be bundled. So that's where you need to define the output. So what we are defining is create a dist directory. So if there is no directory, it will create it. What should be the file name after it bundle it? So we are calling it bundle.js. Create the configuration for Babel, that is your loader. So this is the configuration where we are defining a module which is loader. We are creating an array, so you can define multiple. This is actually a regular expression. It is going to look for all the JS files like index.js, app.js. It is going to exclude node.modules because these are the dependencies that you have installed. It doesn't have to go and look those files and load it. Now the loader that we are going to use is the Babel loader, and this is the query having the presets. Now where have you defined the scripts element? So you would have to go to package.json file. So in this start, we will write npm run build. So if you are going to run npm start, it is going to actually run the command npm run build. So we need to define the build phase now. So let's create a build phase. In the build phase, what we need to define is to use Webpack, to bundle the elements, to create the Webpack dev server, and use the Webpack dev server to watch your components. Alright, so let's create it. Webpack command, webpack-d, and your bundle.js, everything which is going to be bundled in bundle.js that you have defined in webconfig.js over here, bundle.js. Now this will be deployed in public path in the dist directory, and your index.html page needs to have an script element which will be using this bundle.js file, which is going to be render React element into the root element, right? Because whatever the configuration, whatever the elements, components you have defined in React will be going to bundled into bundle.js, and that's what your browser will interpret. This index.html page also needs to be in the dist directory to access this bundle.js file, since that dist directory is going to be in the production. So let's copy this file over to the dist directory. So if you are using Linux, you can use cp. I'm using Windows, so I'd have to define the Windows syntax to copy the file. So we are copying the file index.html from the public folder to the dist folder. Now we will start the Webpack dev server. So this is the configuration for Webpack dev server. This is where we are defining that all the components will be deployed from public /. Here you can define the port. This is the hot, as in if you change anything, it will be redeployed by itself. Now let's create another build for prod, let's say. So for prod, we don't need Webpack dev server. So build of prod, we are using only Webpack. For P is for prod, D is for dev, and then copy the file to the destination folder. That's it. The last thing we are going to use is the watch. So in this watch phase, we are using Webpack in development mode, copying everything. What is the difference in watch and build phase is that we are watching the progress using Webpack dev server. So when you do that, it automatically updates the browser page when a bundle is recompiled. All right. Now, having said that, everything is done. Let's start this application. How do you start it? npm start. When you do npm start, it is going to the start phase, and it is actually going to run npm run build. Now it is compiled successfully, and if you go, here is the link where your application is running. You have rendered the welcome to React element in your HTML page successfully. Now let's run this application in a watch mode. Run watch. So if you can see that it is going to display the progress, what it is building and where it is as of now. And now if you go to the application link, this is the same, but if you go to Webpack dev server and then bundle, now you can check your app is ready. So if you make any edit, then the progress will be displayed over here.